Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today, we sit down with Jillian Hubbard, an electrical apprentice from Connecticut. Jillian loved to work with her hands from a young age and made the decision to go to a CTE high school. She tried different trades and eventually fell in love with electrical. Life, though, as it happens, gave her a husband and 2 children shortly thereafter, and she found herself on the opposite coast in Washington State. Her dreams of becoming an electrician were put on hold so she could focus on being a mother first and foremost. She also was able to pursue wildly rewarding work over the next 12 years, including being a holistic practitioner. Life happened again, and she found herself back in Connecticut with unfinished business. In March of 2020, she decided to continue her pursuit of becoming an electrician with a burning desire to succeed. Listen in to hear Jillian's story about her journey and love for the skilled trades. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website, blueisthenewwhite.com, to receive all the latest updates. As always, this show's not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on the word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again, and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Jillian Hubbard. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I have a special guest with us today. Her name is Jillian Hubbard. Jillian, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. I really appreciate the experience, and also I am a super fan now that I've gotten to know you, and I've been getting involved more with learning more about your podcast, and reading your book has been amazing. It's such a great read, and I highly recommend it to everybody. I can't even think of anybody or demographic that I wouldn't advise to read it, because it's phenomenal.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. Just as an easy read that puts a smile on your face, and it's just great. So I appreciate you having me on the show today.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to get into it. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience, let them know who you are, where you came from, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
All right, cool. So my name's Jillian Hubbard, and I live in Connecticut over here in the U.S., and I'm an electrical apprentice. I have been an electrical apprentice currently since last March. I was doing it previously in 2006 and 2007. I was in the field as well. But there was a nice big gap there, but I will start at the beginning. So I had first been introduced to the electrical field when I had started my freshman year of high school, because I went to a technical high school. I'm not sure what they have everywhere, but over here in Connecticut, we have technical high schools. So kids are able to choose from different trades, and they get to kind of go back and forth between academics and the trade that they choose. What was really cool was in freshman year, we were given a few days in each trade to see which one we fancied the most, which I think is really something that you touch base on a little bit in your book, and like figuring out which trade is best for you, and just really recognizing that even if you're drawn to the field of construction, but you aren't necessarily sure which one fits best for you, just keep trying, because there are so many different facets, and there's so many different facets in each industry. So it's very interesting. And so I went through high school, and I really loved electrical the most out of all the ones that were given. And at the time I was incredible at it. The theory and everything really intrigued me, and studying code and knowing all of that was just so exciting. And I was really looking forward to building my career and all of that. And, you know, one of the things that I did notice with trade schools, and just in general, is in the trade schools, they didn't they encouraged females to be there. Although I was one of 19 of my entire graduating class, not electrical. I was the only one in electrical. The entire grade that I had graduated with, there was only 19 of us. And, you know, it was always encouraged as females to do it. But one of the things that wasn't ever talked about is the reality of having a family someday. And because who talks to kids about having a family someday? You didn't, and you don't really. But that's one of the things that we don't really talk about in the industry with teens and stuff, is what that looks like for a female in the trades. And so for me, I ended up actually getting married to a fellow classmate who was in the military. And so I had traveled across the country to Washington State. At the time, I didn't realize that my hours didn't reciprocate. So I had to stop doing electrical or start over. And I didn't want to start over. So, you know, I had started my family and had a couple of daughters with, you know, my ex-husband. And then, you know, with motherhood comes all these other things. And especially when you're a military wife, like that's a whole different ballgame than the civilian world. And being 3,000 miles across the country from anybody that you know is also a whole other ballgame. So it was very interesting. But, you know, doing that, and then that situation didn't quite pan out, and coming back to the States over here on the East Coast and being in Connecticut again, I was working for a company that actually built PCBs and circuit boards for military and aerospace. And I was like, well, that's close enough for electrical. It's electronics. So, so I was like, I'm still working with copper, kind of, you know, because there's all those copper layers to building it. But, you know, I always had that interest and that drive and that heart and love for being an electrician. Like, that's what I wanted to be since I found out what the trade was. I just wanted to get into it. And I've always been super big on safety. I'm very big on that too. So, you know, I ended up doing that for a little while, and I had a couple more kids with my previous relationship, and you know, just in general, just was a mom for the last 12 years before I reignited my career to become an electrician. And it was one of the most incredible moments last year. It was in January of last year, 2020, that I realized that my hours were still valid somehow. I wasn't expecting it, but I was grateful for it. And I was able to keep those and continue my career to become an electrician. And I got a job and started plugging away. And here we are. I'm currently doing commercial mostly, but there is some residential and industrial that the company that I work for does as well. I wanted to pick somewhere. I really want to be with a company that like has the capability to be everywhere. I wanted to have a really well-rounded apprenticeship. I thought that was super important, especially because, you know, if you stick to just residential or commercial, like that doesn't necessarily help in the long run with understanding how things are, which you know because you're in the trades too. So like if you do HVAC in a home versus a commercial building, it's just, I'm sure there's differences. I don't know them because I'm not HVAC, but I'm sure it's the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very interesting story, and I think it's going to be relatable for a lot of people out there. You know, especially women who've shown interest in a trade, and because I've talked to a lot of women in the trades now, and a few of them have had similar experiences with, you know, they weren't sure what to do when starting a family. how to do both, if they could juggle, doing both, how the employers responded, because some of them got much deeper into their career, than you had before they had a family as well. And so, those are some of the topics that we covered. I've got a couple of questions that stand out to me. So you went to a technical high school. How did you decide to go there? Is that something that your parents were just like, you're going to this high school, or was that something that you were interested in before you even started high school?
That was something I was interested in before I even started high school, mostly because I lived in a really small town and I didn't really want to go to the regular high school. And I've always been a really hands-on person. And so to me, the idea of being a part of the trades, and because I learned better by doing, that just felt like a better fit for me as a person. So I was super intrigued by the idea of technical high school, and it felt really fun. And it was a really enjoyable experience overall. Did I learn everything that I could have academically? Probably not. Because, nowadays kids are learning so much. And I only graduated in 2006. But it doesn't matter. It's been so much of a change. It's incredible. But for example, what I mean by there's so much more I could have learned in high school is the foreign language wasn't an option. That wasn't even given as an option then. And then also, for example, math. I learned pre-algebra, geometry, algebra 1, and small business math. We didn't have calculus or trig or anything like that. Whereas now my kids are in middle school doing algebra. So it's just a whole different world, even though it's not been that long.
No, it really is. It really is, and because I think back to when I was in high school too. I didn't go to a technical high school. I went to, for lack of a better term, an experimental high school. It's weird. I don't think I've ever said that on this podcast before, but it has since been redesigned into a standard high school. So basically, I was the guinea pig for a failed experiment, is the way that I'm looking at it. But it was a little bit strange, and it was like a cross between a regular high school, a technical school, and like a college campus. It very, very strange. They didn't have any doors or walls between the classrooms. So you could, yeah. So it was like it was a common area, and then it had big open spaces, four classrooms surrounding that common area with open spaces. So you could see and hear the other teachers teaching and the other class learning right across the way, which, I don't think they accounted for the
distraction.
No, it wasn't. I think the distraction was part of it, right? I think that was part of the experiment, is that, they wanted to see if they could make kids immune to distraction, right? By causing a lot of it. I don't think that they anticipated the mischievousness of high school students, because I remember vividly getting up in front of the class, and then they took attendance, they wrote it on this dry erase board, and they hung it outside the class for the people to come around and pick it up, so they knew if you were absent that day. Well, the problem is it was between the classes, number one, the classrooms, so you could see when they did it. And then number two, the pencil sharpener was right next to it. So all of the kids in the high school struck deals with one another. Hey, just erase my name from the attendance sheet, just so they don't see that I was tardy. And so nobody ever missed class, but everybody skipped class. They kept wondering why there were like 6 people in the classroom, but they were all marked as present. So
they're all present.
Yeah, so it's my point in that, I guess, is that it's strange to see this type of thing evolve. One thing that I know has remained consistent, because I've talked to a lot of people about it now at this point, is aside from in a technical high school, the trades really aren't pushed. Yeah. In my high school, it wasn't pushed. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't brought up. It wasn't outwardly bashed, but it wasn't really given to me as an option.
It was very college focused.
It was very college focused, yeah, and I think that's the way a lot of high school operates now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like how you address that in your book too. Even though I haven't gotten too far into it, I'm only on page 27, but that is a lucky number of mine. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to stop here so that I have fresh eyes tomorrow for it. But I think that you touched base on that pretty good in that.
So the next question I have, you said you loved electrical. You gave a bunch of reasons why you love electrical. So what other trades did you try? What did you dip your toe in when you got into high school, and what didn't you like about the other trades?
I actually have always loved cooking. And when I went to TD, I originally thought I was going to do culinary.
Ah.
And it didn't pan out that way because I didn't care about it as much, I guess. Like electrical just kind of stole my heart. And another one that was definitely second place for me was carpentry. But to be honest, the teacher was a perv and it was uncomfortable. And yeah, there's just, teachers are different nowadays, I guess. But yeah, it was just a super uncomfortable situation. It was like being on a job site in 2006 versus 2021. That's something that has definitely grown in strides in the industry, is the sexual harassment. So being an apprentice in 2006 and 7 as a 19-year-old girl versus being an apprentice as a 33-year-old woman and mother of 4 children, and, you know, like getting back into the field in 2020, it's kind of almost like night and day. I know that there's a lot of people that are breaking into the industry and have gotten into the industry that are females in the last like 5 years, which I think is phenomenal. And I'm so excited to see so many people and to meet so many females in the trades. And there's so many women that I'm meeting in the trades that have been in the trades for so long. And I'm sure they'd agree with me. The difference between then and now, it was like almost like a shock, not in a bad way at all, but just in like a, wow, this is so much different than what I experienced back in 2006 and 7. And I think that that's somewhere where socially, as America, like we've really come in strides. So I think that that's something that's honestly should be a little bit more of a perk and a drive for females in particular into the industry, is it's not so uncomfortable in that direction. Whereas, you know, 15 years ago, it was definitely a lot less comfortable to be a part of the trades and be a female on a job site.
Did you feel some of that discomfort? You said you were the only woman in your electrical area, right? Your actual class.
Yeah, the graduating class. Yep. So I've just kind of always been like the dead mother. It's funny because in high school, I don't know, in general, I just always have had this like nurturing sort of personality. And so for me, I just always want to take care of everybody that I'm around. And that hasn't really changed on a job site. Admittedly, I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. But I may have water bottles and first aid kits for anybody that's on the job because I just can't help myself.
Where's Jillian? Oh, she's the one handing out sandwiches over there.
I just want to take care of everyone. But but yeah, so it's just kind of funny. But you know, and even in high school, like I would be making coffee and I would even make my teachers food. Like we had a pseudo kitchen in the closet. I don't even know if the administration knew about it.
Awesome.
But we did. So it was a good time though. And you know, actually my graduating class, my electrical class, we all quite a few of us. I'd say half of my class. We all still chat. I actually have a group chat with like 6 of my closest ones. And we still get together for barbecues and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. And there was, I think, 17 of us that graduated from that, from electrical. So.
Oh, okay. Very cool. So talk to me then, you know, after that, you said you had gotten married, you moved literally to the other coast of the United States. Was that, I mean, I know you were probably in love and super happy and all of that, but was there, touche. Was there a disappointment that you couldn't continue with this career that you started? Did you feel
very much so?
Yeah.
Really.
And for the next 12 years, were you able to fill that void with other things did you always have that kind of burning in the back of your mind, like, this is something I've got to do?
Well, naturally, like any of us, I believe, that are just all heart in the industry, we drive by a job site, we naturally are like, ooh, you know, or we're just like, I wonder what's going on there, or we're like anticipating, like you have all the processing going on. Whereas people who aren't in the industry, they drive by a job site and it's just another building or another whatever. And so I always had that longing for being in the industry. I always missed it. And I always wished that I had been able to continue and that I did continue. And I will say, though, that there's nothing that I've done in my life that I really regret. And so that's a big thing. It's like, I will never regret anything because everything that I've experienced has brought me to the person that I am right now. And it was all relevant and it was all necessary. But there, of course, is going to be longing because I am human. But there was lots of things that had kind of filled those voids, like obviously motherhood. There's all sorts of, I did a lot of home-based businesses, which I think a lot of women do nowadays, just to try to, like, you know, play things out, and they fall in love with some sort of product and then they start selling it because that's just, you know, what you do, I guess, as moms. I don't know anybody that is in my friends list that you know, is on social media or in general and hasn't sold something. And so, like, I had done a lot of different home-based businesses and stuff like that. And then I also had become a holistic practitioner myself. And after I got my divorce was when I was really doing a lot of healing, and I had learned about crystals and I had learned about Reiki and energy work and working with sound therapy and stuff like that. And I've always been somebody that had anxiety. And as a teen, even, because I had a really challenging upbringing, it was very, very challenging in many ways. And I did struggle with depression and anxiety just from like a very early age because of that. And working with different holistic modalities and stuff really helped me to heal those different parts. And it's always a healing process. If we're being honest with ourselves and we're actually doing the deep work, it's never done.
Yeah.
But I basically filled my time with my kids and then helping other women and helping children really recognize their value and be a blessing for themselves by recognizing how perfect their imperfections were, because I think everybody's perfectly imperfect. And it's so important. Like, we are in a society where everybody's always beat down. And honestly, in the trades industry, that hasn't really let up. Like, I haven't experienced much uplifting, exciting feelings in the last year. It's been a lot more being beat down than it has been uplifting. And it's hard for me as somebody who has, for the last decade, worked with people on communication and worked with people on their self-awareness and their self-image and like the way that they're feeling. It can be challenging sometimes to go from that gear to then going to this more harsh environment where a lot of people just don't give a crap, to be honest. Like, I don't even know if I can say that. I'm sorry. But, you know, obviously I'm not going to paint it as a perfect rose because it is still a hard industry. There is a lot of goodness. Like, we've made strides in the sexual harassment thing, but there's still a lot of stigma with being a female in the industry too. Mm-hmm. So like, if I say something and then, you know, my comrade says the same thing to the same person, it is taken totally different. And that is something that I've experienced quite a few times throughout the last year of being back in the industry. So that is somewhere where I do have a hard time telling, like, do I shut up? Do I advocate for myself? Do I, how do you handle that situation? And so like that is kind of one of those things. It's like, where do you go? You know? Yeah. So like, that's something that people who are getting into the trades are definitely going to experience as an apprentice. It's hard because you have to know your place. And I don't agree with the thought process that some people in the industry has of an apprentice should be seen and not heard. I think that that's completely atrocious. And I think that anybody in the industry that believes that that is the way that it should be should really take a look in the mirror, because they're part of the problem. And, you know, what's incredible is we have all these people who have all this incredible potential, and all we have to do is just show them how to do it successfully. Like, no apprentice is ever trying to struggle. Okay. Like, you know, like, how many times did you really want to struggle with a project? And it's like, why are we making them fail 10 times? Like, there comes a time, like, yeah, let's have them learn, because, you know, everybody needs those gears to turn and to really like get in there and do it. But don't knock them on the amount of time it takes them to do it, because, you know, it takes everybody time to learn it. Otherwise, if you're looking for productivity from like a first or second year apprentice, then you should probably just teach them off the whip, because they're not going to get it.
Right. You got to do something slow before you can do it fast.
Right.
I'm going to stop you there real quick. There's a lot there that you said, and I want to touch on some of it, which is really, really great. So first off, I think you have a great mindset. I think that you know, the outlook that you have on personal development is fantastic. You know, and because you said that you know, basically in so many words, you know, you have no regrets on how things turned out because of who you became today as a result. You know, and I think that everybody listening should probably take note to that, because it's a very true statement. I mean, you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, and how you respond to that is going to shape who you are. And that's very, very important. It also sounds like in between the trades, you were doing some very rewarding work too, working with kids and helping to heal people, you know. So and the lessons that you're able to learn from all of that kind of goes hand in hand with your nurturing mentality. You know, I can kind of see that. But, you know, all of these different things that you pick up along the way, in my opinion, will only help you further your trades career, you know, because they're all very important. And the skills that you've developed, I think, are very transferable. With your example, you know, given that in this industry, when you're an apprentice, a lot of times, yes, it is a harsh environment. You know, and you need to be mentally sound in order to endure it a lot of the times. Is that the way that it should be? Maybe not. Is that the way that it is? Yeah, it is. A lot of times it is. And of course, that's not for every company out there, you know, but I think that a lot of the trades companies that exist today are still of a bit of an old school mindset, and some of them are starting to shift as the newer generations, you know, take over the businesses and things like that. But a lot of them still have that old school mentality in a lot of ways. One of which was, you know, If you're an apprentice, then yeah, you need to be seen and not heard. You're going to do what we say when we say it. You're going to jump as high as we tell you when we tell you, and I think there's a lot more value to be gained if that's gone about differently. But again, I'm a big personal responsibility buff. So I think that anybody listening to, it's not to say that however you're treated isn't valuable to you and your personal growth. It's about how you respond to it, and I kind of picked up on that from you, where you said sometimes you didn't know how to respond. Do I advocate? Do I just walk away? What do I do? And there's no easy answer, right? I mean, you got to walk the line, and you got to find the line first. So you got to find the line, and then you got to walk it.
Yeah.
And especially with being a female in the trades, because that just adds another element to it. Because as we move along, in our timeline of the trades and everything else, yes, it's becoming more acceptable and more common. It's still not common, but it's becoming more common that women are entering into the trades. But a lot of people still don't know how to handle it, right? They still there's that stigma that surrounds it, and it's up to people like you to find that line and to walk it, for the next generation of women who are coming up and are going to do the same thing, because ultimately that's what's going to create the change, right?
Exactly. And it makes it hard too, because you obviously, everybody, male or female, like wants to advocate for themselves, but it is important as an apprentice to know when to talk and when not to. But it's always about learning the hard way, I feel like, in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of being able to trust and honor the people that you're working with around you, and hope that they do the same thing too. And that's one of the things, like, I honestly feel like the way that I view the world, and pulling from that holistic side of things, I feel like our industry could benefit so much from so many facets of that. And I genuinely feel like if we did shift that a little bit more in our industry, that we might see a little bit more productivity from our team, especially if we focused on I feel like what I've seen so far is the companies that focus on like team culture and just in general, just doing things like that, just focusing on the culture of the community that is the company, because the company is a community.
That's what resonates with this next up and coming generation too the most, right? With you and I are millennials, right? But then you get the Gen Zs coming up behind us, and they're very much culture based, and they want to be in an environment that they feel comfortable in, and that they can thrive in, and that they feel challenged in, but not threatened in.
Right. I kind of feel that way myself.
Yeah.
I think that everybody probably feels that way about certain things, just because, but I also feel like we're kind of at that tail end of the old school ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, we are standing on that line of like old school traditions meets the new school culture focused, like, you got this kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And so it's just so funny, because we really are literally towing that line and like straddling it hard, because that's what kind of our generation is, us that are in our 30s, maybe even late 20s. But like that's something that is so significant for right now. And I'm not saying that the old way is wrong. There's so many good things from it. And like, there is a certain level of like, apprentices do need to focus and everything else. But I think that shifting the phrase could be a little enhanced,
Yeah.
but like, it's just incredible how many different things that we get to experience. Like our generation is experiencing so many amazing things.
Yeah.
When you think about the people who are in their 80s and above, think about how many things they experienced. And here we are, we're literally doing it ourselves. But because it's so day to day, it's just another day.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you look back at our frame of, our time frame when we get old, it's going to look just as incredible. But we really are, as an industry, really straddling that line of like the way things were and the way things will be. And
the really good companies out there, I think, because the old school way of thinking was very focused on accountability, right? Which and that was basically the only and that was basically the only focus. All the other cultural stuff kind of fell by the wayside. It was all focused on the accountability, do your job or get out. That was really the motto. And which there's a lot of value in that, especially, with personal responsibility and all the safety measures that need to be taken and what we're responsible for, by manufacturing civilization, if you will.
Right.
But the really good companies today are the ones that have found a way to intertwine the accountability mentality with the new cultural mentality, because the problem, I think, with the old school way of thinking is that they're under the impression that you focus so much on the culture and the millennial way of doing things that there is no accountability. So they just shut down the whole system and they say, no, this is the way we're going to do it. But the successful ones are the ones that are able to find a way to hold people accountable while still creating an environment for them to thrive. And it's not an easy thing to do, but it can be done. And there are companies out there that are making some huge strides, to your point, in being able to do this. And I think that's going to be the future of the trades. Well, I shouldn't say that. It has to be the future of the trades.
Now, right.
Yeah, otherwise there won't be any people left to do the trades.
Right.
And so, anybody listening in the future generation of tradespeople, it's going to be a much more suitable environment moving forward. And it takes the effort of everybody. It takes the effort of.
Definitely takes a village.
It takes a village. It takes people, like you and like me to take the brunt of it and get through it. My dad has a saying. He told me once that you haven't failed until you've given up. That's the only time you'll ever fail. So no matter how many times you get knocked down, no matter how many times you get called stupid or whatever, you get back up, you brush it off, you keep moving forward until, you no longer hear things like that anymore, because that day will come. And I think it's very, very important to be able to endure that, overcome that, and be better for it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And like, there's so much goodness to be had within the industry. It's completely insane. And as you know, you do HVAC and with all of the trades, but I don't know a lot about all of the others, but I know electrical, we need to know a little bit about all the trades. And I feel like that goes hand in hand with each one of the trades. We all need to understand who needs to go where, understand what works best as a whole, because you might have a set of prints and I might have a set of prints and they might not match up, because unfortunately a lot of times, the people who are architects or engineers and building these prints, sometimes they don't quite line up. And I think that one of the things too with the industry one of the things I think would be really cool is if it was a requirement in order to build prints and stuff like that to actually have field experience.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
It would be so much better for everyone.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think you haven't gotten to the part in my book yet, but I mentioned that in the book that engineers would be much better off if they had field experience first, because the practical application of what they're trying to put together completely differs from, the actual theory behind it a lot of times. So I'm curious. I wanna know, you started off, you started back up, I should say, in March of 2019,
Mhm.
which, by the way,
2020
it's, or
was
2000,
just last March,
2020.
yeah.
Yeah, right. 2020, which, by the way, is a horrible time to start.
Yeah,
I'm sure you figured out real quick. Nobody foresaw that,
2 weeks,
obviously, but
2 weeks
man,
before the kids got sent out of schools. 2 weeks.
my
And
goodness,
I was a stay-at-home mom. And I only
jeez.
worked part-time doing this stuff that I was doing on the side and volunteering. I volunteer for my community a lot too. I run a couple different things like the beautification committee and the community cleanup here in town, and it's very eco-driven and everything. And the kids love helping with that, but I wasn't working full-time. I haven't worked full-time since being in the trades in 2007. And so I went from being essentially a stay-at-home mom to then being in the trades. And oh my gosh, getting back in was exhausting. My whole body hurt for a couple of months, or at least a month. And
Yeah.
those first couple weeks were brutal because I wasn't used to it yet. And the building I was at had multi-level, and it's just a lot of running around, like 15,000 plus steps a day. You'll get your steps in. It's great.
Oh yes.
And and then the kids ended up having to come home. It was only 2 weeks in. It was completely wild. And I mean, probably, nobody predicted 2020 or even the beginning of this year the way that it's gone. So I don't even try to predict how.
No, you're better off not. You're better off not even trying to figure that out. So what have you learned since you got back into the trade? I mean, was there anything that jumped out at you that you were like, oh man, this is going to be good for me?
Well, all of it. I love, not all, I don't mean all of it like I know all of electrical, but all of the things have kind of jumped out as this is going to be great for me. I genuinely appreciate, and I genuinely have enjoyed getting to work with all of the different journeymen that I've had so far in my journey in the last year with the company that I'm with. Quite a few of them have really taught me a lot. And I've done a little bit, like literally only a couple like days of residential. So it's mostly been commercial. But what I found is that I definitely am more commercial than residential. And I think that that's something that is important to recognize too, is which area of the industry, like not only like which facet of the job that you gravitate toward most and you're most passionate about, but also which side of the industry, because you have industrial, residential, commercial is all different. You have old work, new work.
Yeah.
And so like something that I had never worked on before is fire alarm and that sort of thing. But like, I guess I've just really enjoyed all of it equally. I've really, I don't know which part
and that's okay. I mean,
would really stick out the most, but in general, I've just really enjoyed being back.
Yeah.
And I've just tried to absorb as much as I can, and I try to follow direction as best as I can. And
you're ready to finish what you started.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I am not stopping. I don't care if the pandemic showed up right when I started back up. I'm not stopping for anything this time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so it's amazing to me how fast time flies already. I can't believe we've been talking for as long as we have. I feel like I could talk to you for like 4 more hours. But my audience would not appreciate that because they'd be like, Josh, what are you doing? So, but this is one question I like to ask everyone, and I don't want to let this run too long without asking this question. So one of the things that I preach, and you'll get to it in the book if you haven't already, but is the idea of success and how everybody's definition of success is different.
Yes.
And we tend as a society to push everybody towards a one singular definition of success, which is college, a degree, money, that. But there's so much more to it, right? It's very much subjective. And so I like to ask everybody, what is your idea of success? What makes you feel successful? Just not necessarily in the trades, but as a whole.
I love that question so much, Josh. So my definition of what success would be is joy and being happy. Like there's so much passion that is to be had in this world. And we oftentimes take for granted the little things and we overlook them because we are in this mentality and this workflow life rush of go, go, go. And sometimes just slowing down and watching the sunset or the sunrise or sitting and listening to water for a little while or just taking that moment for peace for yourself is huge. And for me, if you can find the balance of giving yourself the time that you give to every other thing that you're passionate about and you make yourself something that you're passionate about, that is what I think success looks like. Because once we harness that power that we're giving away to every other person and we start filling our own cup instead, is where I feel like our power and our joy and our happy and all of the other great things really falls into place, because then we are able to give 110% to all of those other areas in our lives. So I think that for me, success is being able to do that and still be able to balance your home and work life is huge.
Yeah. No, and that's a great answer. And I mean, basically what I'm hearing is, and it's dangerous in today's day and age because there's so much noise, but to be present, right? I mean, to really be in the moment, whatever that moment looks like, wherever that moment is, listening to the water, watching the sunrise, the sunset, which is awesome to do in the trades when you're on the top of a building,
Yes.
just throwing that out there. But you're absolutely right. And in this day and age, when we're constantly checking our phones and tablets and computers every 30 seconds, it's kind of, it's very elusive. Not many people know how to experience that. Not many people know how to find that joy, how to be present, how to be passionate about themselves, because everything is about everything else. Nothing is about right here, right now,
Right.
So,
yeah, and just unplugging. Unplugging is so huge. I am not one to, like, sure, I'll have my phone on me, but I'm not as plugged into things as most people tend to be. And I do that on purpose. The only reason why I really have my phone on me is because I want to make sure that I'm around for my kids if necessary, or we use them as walkie-talkies if we don't have walkie-talkies on the job.
There you go. There you go.
But, for the most part, I think they, yeah, if you're just able to be present, it's going to make a world of difference. And that goes to, like, we haven't really talked about this at all. And not a lot of people are talking about it, but the mental side of everything. And COVID in addition to being in the trades and being an essential worker, we haven't had that time at our houses where we're just, going, a little bit stir crazy and stuff like that. Like essential workers, we're out there, we're frontline. Like a lot of us, we're experiencing being put into these environments where there's COVID and stuff like that. And in the trades, I don't know if you remember it, but I'm sure you do, but last year there was quite a long time where we didn't have any sort of masks, or any sort of PPE. PPE was very, very slim because it was all going to the hospitals. And even then they didn't have any, and that's something that fatigue and that spiritual drain that has happened in the last year, like that's something that's across the board. And I think that one of the things that's cool about the trades that kind of helps with that is you do always have a team. So you're not working by yourself really ever. And so at least during that essential worker time, like we're not in cubicles, you know what I mean? So we have that camaraderie and that brother and sisterhood, and that, like, I'm non-union, so I don't technically have that, but you still have that team of people that you're going through this pandemic with, and you're getting to experience this together as a unit. And so it's just very interesting because, like, that's something that I noticed doesn't get talked about very often. I don't know if you've talked about it much, but and I know it's like kind of off topic from the podcast, but at the same time, like it kind of goes hand in hand because, like, again, it's like that balance of workflow and you know, where people are at.
Yeah,
like checking in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've talked about the importance of teamwork and camaraderie, and you know that as one of the benefits of the trades and stuff like that on the show and in the book. I haven't related it back specifically to the pandemic, but you're right. I mean, a lot of us were in the same boat, you know. But it's you know, it is a team that we can kind of share these experiences with, and you know, it really makes you feel, you know, connected to not only your craft but the other people that are in your craft, you know. Yeah, absolutely.
Being an essential worker right now and in the trades, like, of course it's really hard, and you know, all that goes on with it, but I can't help, like, now that I'm talking about it with you right now, I can't help but think about all those people that did go to college and are probably sitting at home alone and doing, you know, whatever it is that they're doing. And the isolation alone sounds
exhausting.
unappealing.
Exhausting. It does. Even with Zoom meetings and stuff like that, I couldn't do it. You know, that is beyond, you know, my capabilities, my personality. I need to be, you know, around people, around teammates, you know. And look, I'm sure it works for some people, but the majority, I think, out there are getting a little stir crazy. But but on that note, Jillian, we've got to wrap it up. I know we didn't get to half the stuff that we wanted to talk about today. You're just so interesting. And, you know, make such good points and give such good advice. I think that my listeners are really going to find a lot of value in this episode. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing that wisdom. So before we take off, did you want to let people know where they can find you?
Sure. I mean, if anybody wants to find me, they can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Jillian Hubbard. I'm sure you'll find my face. I'm in Connecticut.
There you go.
Which I made a little joke of. But yeah, I don't really use a lot of my other social media platforms for non-family and friends. So that's kind of that for finding me. But I look forward to all the connections that come to be, and I love getting to know other people in the trades. And if anybody ever has any questions for me, or if there's ever any females who need an extra person to chat with that's out there and is considering the industry, or if there's a young gentleman who's considering the industry and found any value in what I had to say and wants to ask me questions, I'm all ears. I am definitely open to chatting with whoever about the industry, and also about, you know, whatever it is that their needs may be.
Awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate that. I know my audience will too. And again, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jillian.